I am pro-life 100%. Let me change that. I'm pro-life 1,000%. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made.
Of course, after working tirelessly to put conservative justices on the Supreme Court and destroy abortion rights, many Republicans are now coming out to pretend I'm pro-choice. What are you talking about? Oh, those past views I had, I don't know who that person is. I'm always pro-choice. So I'm going to go over what happened this week and the reaction from many Republicans, and particularly I'm going to focus on two, Kari Lake and Donald Trump, and just the amazingness that is this absolute bullshit. So to be clear, before I even start, Republicans are not for abortion rights. But they are now, many of them are pretending to be with their messaging because they see how much it is hurting them electorally to be against abortion. So this is what happened this week in Arizona. The Arizona Supreme Court gave the go-ahead on Tuesday to prepare to enforce a long dormant law that bans nearly all abortions. How long dormant? It's an 1864 law. This predates Arizona's statehood and provides no exceptions except in the case, potentially, of the mother's life, if the mother's life is in jeopardy, which, considering that doctors can be prosecuted if they perform an abortion when the mother's life is not in jeopardy, the mother would have to be, nearly gone for them to be willing to administer an abortion, as they, of course, want to avoid jail time for this. So this idea of, the mother's life in jeopardy, in likely very little cases would that even require them, or I should say, there's very rare instances where a doctor is going to be willing to perform an abortion because it could be argued that the mother's life was not actually in danger. So this enforcement won't begin for at least 2 weeks. So there is a 2-week span here where potentially things will be changed. And considering that Republicans in the state now are like, I hate this. What do you? I love abortion. We're going to see where this all goes. But this carries a 2 to 5 year prison sentence and would likely only apply to doctors. But the penalties also apply to providing abortion pills. 2 to 5 years in prison for administering women's health care. That's what this is. It's completely insane to the point that even Republicans, I'm not suggesting they think it's insane. I think they think it's fine, but they know electorally it's going to hurt them because not as many people, there aren't more insane people than there are sane people. I know sometimes it feels like there's more insane people, but there really isn't. So they see it's hurting them. So now, the day after, Republican candidates downplay past anti-abortion stances ahead of the election. Now, these are the states where it shows you banned, legal with certain limits, and legal. And in many of the legal states, or at least states where this will hurt them electorally if they're against abortion rights, those are where the Republicans are changing their minds on this. So let's start with Kari Lake. I'm going to show you the switcheroo here, the before and the after.
I am pro-life 100%. Let me change that. I'm pro-life 1,000%. And I think America has come a long way since Roe v. Wade. We've learned so much about how life is formed, how it started with the ultrasounds and sonograms. We now see our babies when they're just so tiny inside of our womb. And this push to brainwash our children and an entire generation of young people to think that the execution, the sacrifice, the killing of a baby in the mother's womb is in any way healthcare is just outrageous. And we have a lot of work to do. I chose life, but I'm not every woman. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made. I'll never forget the first time I got pregnant, taking that pregnancy test, looking down, and I was excited. But I'll be honest, I was afraid as well. I was nervous. I was anxious. It's natural for women to be nervous and anxious when they're pregnant. I never would ever assume that any woman had the same exact feelings I had or situation I had. We know that some women are economically in a horrible situation. They might be in an abusive relationship.
It is incredible to see the switch. And I'm going to get to, even when it comes to this law that was just passed, the switch that Kari Lake made. But to see Kari Lake pretend to have empathy here for women in tough economic situations, and she's okay with abortions in those cases, it's a complete 180 from what Kari Lake has been spouting. And it also goes to show there is no deep principles here on anything. This is simply what is good for me electorally. I'm going to do that. She's been kissing Trump's ass for years, and that has worked for her so far. And now this is hurting her, and she sees the need to switch around her messaging on this, and that's what she's doing. Again, to be clear, Republicans are not going to protect abortion rights. Clearly, you saw what they did with the Supreme Court. But the messaging here is all they're focused on, is pretending enough that they care about abortion rights to try and get just enough votes to be able to fool people and win an election. Now, Kari Lake on the 1864 law, in 2022, quote, "I am incredibly thrilled at 1864 law banning nearly all abortions in Arizona," the one that just passed. Now, quote, "I oppose today's ruling." From the Arizona Supreme Court upholding the 1864 law banning nearly all abortions. It is a direct change, a clear change. Now, it's important to know before I get to Trump here, just so New York Times tracked this, how women and children fare. States hostile to abortion fare worse on a variety of health and well-being outcomes, while states supportive of abortion rights tend to have a more generous social safety net. So across the board here, whether it's children in poverty, uninsured women, uninsured children, low birth weight babies, teen births, infant mortality, maternal mortality, states that have banned or are likely to ban, meaning likely states that of course lean more Republican, fare worse on every single one of these issues compared to states that have abortion rights. And this applies to policy as well. Paid family leave, expanded Medicaid, minimum wage above $7.25, and universal pre-K, which is the only case where both sides are tied here. But in all other cases, states that are unlikely to ban abortion have just generally a better social safety net. Now, this is where we get to, show you, if you want to go through the CNN piece, there are many politicians. So in the case of, for example, Joe Kent here, who is running for the U.S. House in Washington's 3rd District. His switch, July 2022, "I would move to have a national ban on abortion." And this year, he said, "I don't support a national ban on abortion." So you can go through this piece. I'll link to below the video under sources, see if one of your politicians or candidates for your district is on here and their little switch, and just understand they're full of shit. If it's a Republican, they're not going to protect abortion rights. That is obvious. Again, look what they did to the courts. Now, Donald Trump, incredible. This is was truthed out on April 12th. The Supreme Court in Arizona went too far on their abortion ruling. And then, he just blabs on for a whole paragraph. "Democrats are the extremists." That's a hilarious line, considering the reason that the thing that just happened in Arizona happened is because of the extremists that were the Republican Party when they were in power, putting conservative justices on the Supreme Court. To then claim that Democrats are extreme when this extreme Arizona law only went into effect because of Republicans is, of course, completely insane. Now, here is him speaking on this recently.
Mr. President, while you were in office, you said that you would sign a federal abortion ban if Congress sent it to your desk. Why should Americans trust your word that you would not do it now if you were reelected?
Because we don't need it any longer, because we broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible. We gave it back to the states.
Yeah, you gave it back to the states, which resulted in the state of Arizona upholding an 1864 law banning abortion. You're the problem. Republicans are the problem. This idea that he's putting forward here, that he solved this issue by putting it back to the states, which resulted in all of these bans across the country. One more clip from this clown.
Over the last few decades, Mr. President, you have both considered yourself pro-choice and pro-life. Which one is it?
Well, you know exactly which one it is.
I just wanted to show that quick clip there because do we know which one it is? Let's be real here. I know which one it is. Yes, Trump is obviously pro-choice, but in terms of how he uses his power, he is anti-choice. He is anti-abortion rights. He's definitely pro-choice in his own personal life. There's many stories about that. But in terms of how he wields his power, the base he wants to rile up to ensure he gains that power, because he knows generally Democratic voters are not going to fall for his bullshit, but he knows Republicans do. So he speaks to their issues, and they don't care that he clearly is full of shit, as long as he's using his power to do what they want to see done, which is what he did when he was in power that resulted in destroying abortion rights. I'm going to end on this. I'm not going to play this whole video. It's not worth it, but it shows you just there's no principles on anything. I am not running to terminate the ACA, as crooked Joe Biden says all over the place. As Donald Trump himself, how many times has Donald Trump said, I'm going to destroy the ACA. We're going to get rid of the ACA. We're going to replace it with something much, much better.
We're going to create great health care. We're going to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to terminate it. We're going to win by knocking the hell out of Obamacare, terminating it with Obamacare. Getting back to the boring subject, it's almost a waste of time talking about it, because when we terminate it, all we'll do is say it was a bad experience for the American people. We are decimating Obamacare. We got a bad vote the evening. We got a bad vote the evening that we were going to terminate Obamacare. Hopefully we'll win at the appellate division and go to the Supreme Court to terminate Obamacare.
And now,
I'm not running to terminate the ACA, as crooked Joe Biden says all over the place.
again, it's all about what he views as electorally beneficial for him. He understands, look, the ACA has problems. I support universal health care. I support publicly funded universal health care. That is an obvious thing that that my country of Canada has done. Every other modernized country has implemented some form of universal public funded healthcare. The U.S. is stuck in the Stone Age, but regardless, it is the ACA improved things somewhat despite the rising costs. But you see here, he knows what is electorally beneficial for him. So this is what the campaign is going to be about. From this point on, because he has the nomination, he doesn't need to speak to the crazy people as much anymore. So he is trying to make himself, I guess he's hoping people forget that he was already president for 4 years and it was completely fucking crazy. So he's just trying to position himself as a moderate on some issues, as if we didn't all see what happened while you were in power. I don't know. Maybe to be fair to him, voters appear to have short memories, so he's hoping that people forget how crazy things were when he was in power. I don't know, but I think it's very clear the Supreme Court is going to be a major electoral issue. The idea of Republicans continuing to put conservative justices on the Supreme Court, which would continue to have an impact for generations to come. This is going to be a big issue that Democrats are going to be discussing, especially as it applies to abortion rights. So you're going to see Republicans now just pretend, oh, I was always reasonable. What are you talking about?